Welcome to Mindset Mastery Moments, the best growth mindset podcast recognized by Million Podcasts and ranked as a top mindset podcast by FeedSpot. We're proud to be in the top 1% on Listen Notes. Join Dr. Alisa Whyte as we explore powerful insights and strategies to elevate your mindset. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Mindset Mastery Moments, where we explore stories, strategies, and science of mastering your mind and elevating your life. I'm your host, Dr. Alisa Whyte, the #1 mindset disruptor. And today's conversation is one that every parent, educator, coach, and leader needs to hear. We're diving deep into the world of mindful toughness, the ability to stay resilient, focused, and calm under pressure. My guest today, Dr. Christine Silverstein, is a nationally recognized peak performance coach, clinical hypnotherapist, and author of the award-winning book, Wrestling Through Adversity, empowering children, teens, and young adults to win in life. Let me tell you, I can't wait to have this conversation. And we had some technical difficulties before we got here that tested our gift and skill of treading and winning through adversity. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about Dr. Christine. She has helped young people, athletes, professionals across the country master techniques like self-hypnosis, mental rehearsal, positive self-talk, the feedback loop analysis to unlock their inner strength and reach their highest potential. Today, we'll explore what it really means to wrestle through adversity, how to raise resilient kids, and beat anxiety in this world where there's so much anxiousness around us all the time. She's going to teach us how each of us, no matter our age, can access the subconscious mind to win in life. So if you've ever faced a challenge that made you question your strength, this episode will remind you the power to rise again is already within you with Dr. Christine Silverstein. Dr. Christine, welcome to Mindset Mastery Moments. I am thrilled to have you on. Your book, Wrestling Through Adversity, could not be more timely for the world at large. So, Dr. Christine, in your own words, tell us who you are and why you do what you do.
Yes, well, I'm a peak performance coach, as you mentioned. I also have many years as a registered nurse. I became a registered nurse when I was 19 years old.
Wow.
And that's where I learned a lot of my skills in communication, talking to people as persons, not just as patients. And also the idea that I had 4 children when I was younger. I had many challenges with miscarriages before I had them. I was told I was infertile. I was a habitual aborter. That's the title I had. And I helped myself at that time. I went to this special doctor out on Long Island, some miles from my home in New Jersey. And he examined me and said, "Poor dear, you won't have any children holding them in your arms unless you take this very toxic drug, DES, diethylstilbestrol." And I knew, because I was a registered nurse, that that drug had been given for many years, yes, but it was also very toxic. They were finding out at that time it caused cancer in the offspring and in the mother, some years later. And that has been proven to be true. There were some people that I met later in my life. And one girl, her mother took DES, and she had cancer of the cervix in her 20s and cancer of the intestines in her 30s. So I was sure glad that I ripped up that prescription, right away when I left the doctor's office, never took it. And I thank God for that, for the knowledge, that saved me. But I also learned at that time meditation. I learned a transcendental meditation. I practiced that every day. And then when I became pregnant again, this is my 4th pregnancy, I was really scared at night. I was so scared because I had miscarriages in my bed already. I had 2 at work. I had one in a assisted care facility in the bathroom, on the main floor. But I went on with my day giving service to my patients. And so it was a long journey, but I was very frightened. So I had trouble sleeping at night and really just praying that this pregnancy would be okay. And so I learned meditation, and then I also called up a psychologist. It was some distance from my house, and I remember going there and learning self-hypnosis. And so the two of these things, plus changing my diet somewhat and taking some supplements, I was able to have 4 children. I had another miscarriage later on, but I have 4 children and 4 healthy babies. So there
Wow.
to the doctor, right, who wanted to give me this drug. But at any rate, that's how I learned to help myself. And it's very
Mm,
empowering. I called it at
mm.
that time the expectant mind. So I
Ooh.
started to see myself with my baby in my arms. And so that's a form of mental rehearsal that I now know. I didn't then. And also just to say positive things. And if other people can do it, I can do it too. Because it was unexplained. The reason why I was having this challenge was unexplained. And I never did find out why I had all those
Mhm.
miscarriages. But at the same time, I learned how to take care of myself mentally and also
Yes.
knowing now what I know, that there's a direct from the hypothalamus in the brain when you're stressed out right down to the ovaries. I have some diagrams that show that. And I have worked with many women who have challenges with fertility since then. But when my children were young, as I said, I have 4 children, they were becoming teenagers and they had so many issues, either in the sports they were in or socially growing up. They had challenges with school, like teenagers have. And I wanted to help them because I saw them really um, not reaching their potential, and they knew it too. Like my daughter was on a gymnastics team, and she had a big growth spurt, when she turned around 12. And
Mm.
so that means a lot to a gymnast because on the uneven parallel bars, that was her specialty. Well, now her
Mhm.
legs were much longer, her feet were much bigger, and it happened over just, it seemed like over 6 months, so
Yeah.
she was having challenges with that, even at one point falling off the bars. And I said, oh my gosh, I have to help her use the power of her mind. And my son, he had this asthma attack at the state championship, and everybody was watching him and saying he should win, he should win. But because of the asthma attack, he had to take not only an inhaler but a nebulizer bring it to the state championship with him,
Mhm.
and it
Mhm.
was really scary for him. So he didn't win, and I'm looking at him from above in the stands and saying, I have to help my children. I know I can. So I vowed right then I was going to study how to help my children to help themselves. I even brought my son to a psychologist to see how he could be helped. And the psychologist told me I needed to go see. I knew that was the time that I needed to, do something. So I studied hypnotism for many years, more
Mm.
than 30 years. And also I learned for myself what to do to help people to help themselves. That was my goal.
Yes.
Over the course of time, I began working right away with children, teens, and young adults, and most of them were athletes in the beginning. But I also work with adults, helping them with their challenges, and people who are older with fertility issues, many issues. So that's how it all started. And I opened up my office. I was very determined. I brought my children one night to gymnastics, my 3 daughters, and on the way home, I saw this furniture truck from North Carolina, a huge 18-wheeler, and it was in a vacant gas station. And I stopped off there, and they had these recliners outside the truck. I said, I'm going to buy these for my new office, my new hypnotherapy office. So they put
Yes.
it in the back of the station wagon. I brought it home and dragged it into the house onto the ground floor. And I put my plumbers above it. And they said, I'm opening for business. My daughters came home and they said, Mom, what's this? I said, this is my new office. And that's how I began, literally. So I was very determined to learn what to do. And went to rent an office, and the people in the board, they were telling me things like, well, what are you doing? You don't understand. I told them I was going to work with athletes, with people to help them with their performances. And they said, what, are you a tea leaf reader? What, are you a psychic, like the one we just threw out of town? Because they had all these myths about what self-hypnosis was. But fortunately, there was an MD sitting on the board, And he said, haven't you heard of coaches helping people at the Olympics? And that's how I rented my office because I thought they were going to deny me and I'd lose my deposit, right? So at any rate, that was the humble beginnings of my work. And it's been such a pleasure in the people that I work with, especially the young people, because I did specialize in working with them, understanding the neurodynamics of the brain, the developing brain, especially with teenagers and young adults. And so I incorporated all this into my work, helping them using the whole brain, not just one side of it that really is very punitive, the left side of the brain, the critical brain, but also to open up the subconscious mind associated with the right side of the brain.
Oh, I
Through
love
imagery
it.
and through metaphors and positive self-talk and the things that I developed over the course of time, I call mindful toughness skill sets. And
Yes.
and teenagers are just primed for this. They love it. And also young adults, if they're not affected by the negativity in the world by then, they're open to learning new.
Right.
So, but this is for everybody. It doesn't matter what age you are. You can make these
Yes.
fine-tuned changes, and they're simple, easy to learn, portable from one place to another. If you have surgery coming up, you can use the same skills you use on the wrestling mat, And I do work
Yes.
with athletes. I have a program called Operation Heal to help
Yes,
them
I
to heal
saw that.
faster.
I love that. And are you teaching people how to do this outside of working with clients? Are you training people to do the work that you do as well?
Well, I do. I have given many, many workshops. And also right there on the wrestling mat, I've given workshops to wrestlers. I work with a lot of them. And also in my teaching, I write professional articles. And the reason I wrote my book, I wanted to share this
That's where I
very
was coming
important
to.
information. And it was
Yeah.
in 2022 when I started writing it, March
Yeah.
1st. But before that happened, I was inspired actually by my father, who had passed away many years earlier. And he was in a position where he's very weakened. He was paralyzed. He couldn't hold the phone. But I wrote him this letter saying, Dad, this is what you can do to help yourself. Here, I'll help you along because I had helped him to walk previously when he thought he couldn't, but he was too debilitated. So he called me after I sent this letter. My mother was holding the phone and he was crying. And I said, Dad, what's the matter? And he said, I read your beautiful letter. I didn't know you were such a good writer. And so I didn't know either at the time. So he made me promise that I would be a writer and author
Yeah.
because he had wanted to be a journalist before he went to war and he never got the chance. We had 5
Yeah.
children and he never got the chance to study. So he said, well, you
Mm.
could do this for me. So that was years earlier. And then I end up in North Carolina in Labor Day in 2021. And I'm walking along the shoreline and I get dragged out into the ocean with a riptide. And I thought I was going to drown. It was really scary. The waves coming over me. I couldn't move. I was covered with sand and I thought I was going to die. I felt a power over me, over my right shoulder. I think it was angels. And I said, I can't die now. I have to write a book. Instantaneously, this man came. It was a stormy weather. There was nobody on the beach. I thought this man, he came into the water and he took my hand and he pulled me out of the water just then. And he was a professor and he was reading The Count of Monte Cristo, which he put in front of my face and said, this is a book. I have my reading assignment, And I took that to mean that my father was saying, Christine, get to write your book now. This is a good time to do it. And that's when I
Yeah.
started writing my book.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's incredible, powerful. A moment near tragedy becoming a turning point for transformation makes absolute sense. You've said that the crises we're seeing from anxiety to substance abuse among young people was a wake-up call to change how to view mental health. What's that paradigm shift you believe is needed right now in the world? I mean, as you know, there's just so much happening. And I think there's always been a lot happening in the world, but the awareness of it is so much easier for us to know what's happening in Tibet, what's happening in China, what's happening in Japan, because we have all the information, we have all the media outlets that are more accessible to us. Why do you think that shift is needed right now?
Well, it happened to me right at that time when I started writing my book and I was watching the TV and the war in Ukraine had just begun. And
Mm,
also I read the newspapers that talked about how teenagers were in emergency rooms with no care and that,
yeah.
they'd be there for months even to get into a program. And there were no
Hmm.
resources and people didn't have money to buy food, during the COVID,
Right.
which was another issue. And it just seemed to me, wait a minute, Christine, you've been working in this area for many years. By then it was at least 25 years. And I said,
Hmm.
I know what to do and I need to get the word out to people. There's something they can do to help
Hmm.
themselves to grow.
Hmm.
And then therefore they can help their children to grow. And these are the
Right.
skill sets that I'm talking about here. And I just had so much faith in that. Yes, but people don't know about it. And of course, there are very few people qualified to work with children, teenagers. And people say to me, well, why did you even include young adults in your book? I have questions like that all the time because they think they're all grown up and they should be on their own. But we never taught them what they need to know. And they
Exactly.
grew up during such a tumultuous time when you think of the
Hmm.
Gen Zers just being born around the time of the attack on the World Trade Center and all the
Yes.
things that have happened with the recession and with COVID and all these things. And they just expect everybody just to know what to do. But they haven't
Got to
learned,
teach
and the
them.
parents are overwhelmed as well. And there are
Yes.
very few resources, and we can't depend on the government to just take care of us. They're talking
No.
about budget cuts now, big ones,
Ones.
the Department of Education, and that
Yes.
includes disabled children and everyone. So, so I know that you can take these, and that's the paradigm shift I'm talking about, and we all have to work together as community. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter how much education you have. You don't need a PhD. You don't need to be wealthy. You shouldn't be to have health care in this country. You have to be wealthy.
Exactly.
And there's job shortages now, even with people who have master's degrees, they're being laid off. A lot of people are having challenges making out, 1,200 applications trying to get a job. So that's the
Yeah.
situation. So I say you can learn these skill sets. They're easy to learn. You incorporate them into your life as early as possible, even in infancy. You start with your babies, and then we have this skill set to be resilient, and it's free as the air you breathe once learned. It
Mm.
doesn't cost you anything but a little time and effort to cancel out the negativity you've learned, you know, and the negative pictures you might have, or the beliefs about yourself, like I'm not smart enough to
Yes.
go to college, or I'll never be wealthy, things like this that people have that hold them back their whole lives. And that was the
I know.
situation with my dad. My dad wasn't able to become the journalist that he really
And you
wanted to
wanted
be.
to be.
And I see
Right.
myself now as helping people through journalism. I write a newsletter and a blog every week, just telling people about what's going on and what do you think about it, for your own health.
Exactly. Yes, and those are good stuff. I read a couple already. So let's dive into the mindful toughness framework. You've developed this system, like again, we said, to help children, teens, and even adults strengthen their minds the same way athletes train their bodies, which is, I am obsessed with that concept. I live for that. That is what mindset mastery for me is all about. What exactly is the mindful toughness framework and how do you teach it? I'm looking for, I know you included self-hypnosis, relaxation, breathing, visualization, positive self-talk, and the feedback loop. Get into what's inside of this framework.
Well, it's very simple to, I picture in my mind from the very beginning, there was a study years ago, I learned it in college. And
Mm,
it's about Roger Sperry and his split brain procedure. I don't know if you learned about that in school, but it was
yeah.
a big
No.
thing. He looked at the whole brain. And I actually have a story about that because I was taking this course in college. It was called physiological psychology to get my
Mm,
bachelor's degree in nursing. And it was a 3 credit course, and it wasn't a lab course, and I just needed some more science because my degree is in science. I took this class, and we were going into the midterm, right? And the professor said, anyone who gets above a 90 will be exempt from the final. right? So I took that to heart. But this textbook was so challenging to read. It was about the
Yeah.
sodium and potassium going in and out of the cells because it's a physiology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I studied that book. I read the whole thing like over and over for this exam. So I walked into the exam, and everybody who was leaving for the previous class, they were saying how hard it was. This is a really hard test, you know. So that's very negative to be thinking about that when you enter the classroom, right? So I said to myself, just let me look over some things. And I had this article on the split brain procedure in one of my assignment readings. And so I looked down at that, and everybody was talking, and I said, just let me look at over this again, just to make sure I know this is very important, this split brain procedure. And I was right because it was on the exam.
Yeah.
I was one of two people who got over. I think I got 93 on the test, and I didn't have to take the final.
Take the mind.
Yes, and so that stayed with me because that was very important, because I imagine the brain, as I said, I have a whole brained approach. So if you imagine the corpus callosum right here in the two hemispheres of the brain, and anatomy and physiology was always my favorite course, especially that of the brain. So I imagine the left side, it's a cognitive part of the brain, and we use cognitive behavioral therapy. But we also have the right side, and they communicate. It's one mind. So we have this physiological structure, right, which is the brain, but the mind has none and no physiological structure. And we don't quite understand it. And that's one of the reasons why we have trouble with people who have mental disorders. So we don't know. It's not any place in particular that we can locate or take an x-ray of it or, examine it. So that's where the challenge is. But I decided, okay, I'll have this whole brain approach. The left side has to do with things that are relating to cognition, but that's also the critical side of the brain. And then we have the right side of the brain that's associated with the subconscious mind and imagery and visualization and metaphors. And that you can use to support both sides. So it's one mind, two parts, right? And most people think it's two separate things. No, they work together. And of course, we need to have a brain to have a mind as well, which is important. So I decided I would develop this program where we use both sides of the brain. And I use imagery. For instance, some of the wrestlers come to my office and they say, well, I have these skills. I've been wrestling for so many years, but I can't win that championship. I can't in the finals. I always fail, or I don't even get to the finals. Or maybe sometimes they say, I didn't even get on the team yet. And they score, when they come to me. So the idea is that you might use negative self-talk. You might use negative pictures, which is associated with the right side of the brain, but you can change both of them. You can change them in your mind. The subconscious mind where all your skills are stored. And I use the imagery of a toolbox where all your skills are stored. And that includes the skills to heal yourself, right? If you have an illness. And so in the right side, you have all your tools, but you really have to learn to use them. Believe in them, believe in yourself. And then the left side, and there's no judgment in your subconscious mind. You don't have to say, should I use it or not? And you're not going to get an answer anyway, because it's non-judgmental, which is the beauty of this. And that's called getting in the zone that athletes have when you're watching beautiful moves on the football fields or on the wrestling mat. And so the left side will discourage you. So I made a diagram. It's called it's a whole brain approach, and the highway to success, I call it. And I made that early on in my work when I was giving a wrestling workshop to high school coaches. And they loved it after I explained it, because it has this image of the right brain and the left brain and how they meet in the highway to success. And it was very interesting because when I went into this workshop, this was in 1997, the coaches they were all males, and there was discrimination against female wrestlers, me being a female. And they said, oh, we don't believe in this. And I explained what to do, the mental rehearsal, etc. So they said, oh, we don't believe in this hypnosis. But fortunately for me, there was an Olympic champion as a co-worker there, co-presenting, and his name was Kurt Angle. He had just won the gold Olympic medal the year before. And he said to them, you better listen to this woman because this is what I used to win the gold medal. And everybody opened up, of course, after that. So I look back to that time, and it's really funny to me because I was standing there, they're saying, but you never wrestled a day in your life. Well, they didn't have such a thing when I was a child.
Oh, they weren't
And they
allowed
were
to, yeah.
discriminating against women then. Women didn't come into the Olympics until 21st century. They weren't allowed to. So at any rate, he helped me, this Olympic champion, Kurt, helped me for them to listen, and there were many benefits from it. So I look back now, and I look with enthusiasm because I drew these little diagrams like the highway to success, the Humpty Dumpty syndrome, and also the pendulum experiment and things like that I presented to them. I drew them by hand, and I didn't know how they would be received. But that was the beginning of saying, okay, these skill sets are really important, and kept on building them up over the years. So anyway, with this whole-brained approach, you can really control what you want to control. There is, I call it a barrier. So say you're going into an exam and you're really scared that you won't pass, and so it's your worst subject, you're telling yourself. And of course, there's going to be a barrier, and you're not going to be able to access the things that you memorize, the things that you know, simply because you're fearful and you're not accommodating your own needs. And so if you come around the highway to the other side, that's the critical mind, the outer belt, then you really sabotage yourself. And I saw this happen actually when I took my doctoral exam at Columbia University. There was a woman, she was already the CFO of a hospital, right? And she was in my class to get her doctorate. And right before the test, she went into the bathroom and she was vomiting, and she didn't feel well. And I'm not going to be able to pass the test, right?
Wow.
So I helped her. She came out and she was like all pale and coming out of the bathroom. And I helped her and I said, here's what you can do. And it was really quick because it was just a few minutes. And I helped her to get back on track, and she passed the exam. So it doesn't matter how much knowledge and experience and what position you hold. You have that fear, and that fear will sabotage you. What you say to yourself and what you think about yourself and what you imagine, right, in your mind's eye that you're going into this exam and that you're going to fail. It's a horror, right? And many athletes do that when they get onto the baseball field and they sabotage themselves. It's just getting in the zone, relaxing, that's breathing easy, right? So you take your deep breaths, and you also have some triggers for relaxation that I use, like circling the fingers on your non-dominant hand. So I have a breathing easy exercise, and these are all in my book in the 5th chapter 5. And by doing that and taking your deep breaths and also saying easy to yourself as you exhale, as part of this breathing easy exercise. And you'll be amazed that if you train yourself like this, just to say that word easy, you might be sitting in the classroom and somebody might say that. And it happened to me once at a conference. I'm sitting there thinking, this is really hard. And somebody said easy. And oh, no, this is the easiest thing in the world. Yeah. And I was able to accomplish it. So just what to say to yourself. And then also to have some progressive muscle relaxation, which is very important for athletes. But also for us, if you're tense, you're not going to be able to access what's in that toolbox, no matter what it is, even to do, AP calculus, you're not able to do it because you're not in the zone, in a positive space. So as you get into that, and that's just the first step to learn breathing easy, progressive muscle relaxation. And also the triggers, just by circling fingers like this, you can call yourself back into focus. I used that when I took my exam for to be a real estate agent. It was on the computer, and I just focused myself and brought myself back into the present moment. I did great on the exam, doing that. So I use these techniques myself. But that's just for one circumstance, right? So you get through that, say you passed the test or you won a championship. And then you can take these same skills and use them. Many of the student athletes I work with, they start to get on the honor roll, right? They start to believe in themselves. And they say, I think I can do anything. I can accomplish anything, in my life with this. And so the second step that I teach is mental rehearsal, which I mentioned before, that I saw myself being the expectant mom, and that came about So you mentally rehearse your skill sets. You know, if I work with somebody has test challenges, anxiety, then I bring them right to the test side. Okay, you're sitting down. As soon as you sit down, as soon as if you're taking with a pencil, as soon as you pick up the pencil, if you're sitting at the computer, this is what you do. And you take your deep breaths and you pull yourself back to focus and you pace yourself down the page, right? And the answers start jumping off the page at you. So these things are very important, but you imagine yourself, already with that grade that you won, or with your hand being held high because you won the wrestling tournament, things like that. And in the meantime, your job is to cancel out the negative pictures that will come, but you have to be prepared. And also, what will come are the negative words, like you stink while you're performing. That's not a good thing, right?
You stink, you suck. No, it's not going to help you. That's going to put a hole in the balloon. Right. Yes. Dr. Christine, you've helped so many young people unlock their potential. Could you share a story from your book, perhaps, or a client who used these tools to reach high performance in their goals? Yes. Well, I have many in my book, as I said. I used them from different situations. And I like to think of, there's one who was a young adult. She had many challenges. She was 21 years old. And she was working at a mall selling cards, and she wanted to do more with her life. One of the challenges was she couldn't drive. She couldn't drive herself to the mall. She was living with her aunt. Her aunt had a sick husband, and she's thinking, I'm spending a lot of money on taxis. Well, the reason that she couldn't drive at 21 was because when she was 17, on the day she got her driver's license, she heard that her father was dying from 4th stage lung cancer. And she was very close to her father. So from then on, she had like a little accident, and she wouldn't get in the car again, not in the driver's seat, only in the passenger seat. All those years, from 17 to 21. Here's this beautiful girl, very talented. So at any rate, she came to me because she needed to conserve what little money she made, and she wanted to go to college. She thought she'd like to be a art therapist. She was also an artist. So I find these things about this beautiful young woman. She had this huge tattoo on her arm that was resemblance of her father, to remember him. But what happened was she was also a musician. She wrote songs and she played music and she performed on stage. But she didn't think anything of that. She didn't think that that was a skill. That's easy. Like the driving is hard. This was her mindset. And she also was an artist, so she was very gifted. And so the challenge was to get her in the car, to get her to believe in herself. So I started off with her with these new images that you're sitting in the car and you mental rehearse. I told her to sit in her room, do her self-hypnosis, in the basement where there was space, and she could write music if she wanted songs, and just, get in that space and draw. So she was able to mentally rehearse herself getting in the car as if she was actually there, because that's the beauty of mental rehearsal. Neuroscientists are finding out how it works. So when you do something in your mind, say you're a wrestler and you're sitting on your bed at night thinking about the tournament and the moves you're going to make the next day, if you do it 50 times, it's as if your brain thinks you've done it 50 times on the wrestling mat. So it saves on wear and tear. And it also gives you confidence, right? So we did a lot of that, and I made recordings each session. And she was able to, first we started, well, you sit in the driver's seat, right, in your driveway. But she didn't have a car to practice, so she managed to ask her uncle if she could borrow this car and use it. And then she was putting her hands on the steering wheel and just starting very elementary thing, backing out of the driveway and going around the block like that, and maybe going to get some groceries for her aunt, a few supplies during the day. And she started off that way and began to drive more and more. She also applied at the nearby community college to see if she could start studying art therapy. And she also was able to start driving to work and driving on highways with these techniques. And also we went back to her father
and able to talk to him. And, he could talk to her in a mind's eye. And that was very big
Mm-hmm.
support for her because she was very close and whole life was disrupted by this. So,
Oh, bless
so as
her.
time went on, she called her home and her sister answered and I called to check on her. And I said, so how is your sister doing? She said, oh, you would never know that she had any problem. Well, she's driving all over the place. This is some months later, right? So I know that she did really well and she began to believe in herself and that she can
That's
do
so good.
anything. So that was
Yeah.
very rewarding for me because that's in chapter 9, the power of music to heal. And so that's how
Yes.
I used it.
Wow, that's such a vivid illustration of what happens when you give young people the tools, not just encouragement. Man, self-regulate, focus, succeed. That's what I'm talking about. It's practical mindset mastery in action, honestly, Dr. Christine. Now, Dr. Christine, on this show, we always ask our guests to flip the script. Can you share a time in your own life when you had to apply the very principles you teach, a moment when you had to use mindful toughness to overcome your own adversity?
Yes, well, I mentioned some. I mentioned my father dying and then
Yes.
drowning, on near drowning. But there was another incident that happened right after opened my office. It was some months later. I had been to a conference, a workshop on hypnosis, and it was a very busy time of the year. It was in the spring. And so with my 4 children, they were having tap dance recitals and they were having wrestling matches and gymnastics matches, piano recitals and things like that. So
Yeah.
I was busy too, transporting them back and forth because I was in a tap dance class as well. And
Uh-huh.
I never got the chance to do that when I was younger. And because I work with performing artists, I thought this would be a good opportunity. So at any rate, I had just opened my office more recently and one day I wanted some energy, right? I just wanted to, I had to pick the kids up from school. They were in 4 different schools, right? So I had to go around the town. By that time, I said, oh, I have this great ginseng tea that I bought in the supermarket. It had from 3 different countries. I thought this must be really good stuff, right? 3 different countries.
Yeah.
Supposed to give you energy. I no sooner drank the tea before I picked the kids up and I had this huge hive on my back. I'm not kidding. I looked in the mirror. It was one big red hive from drinking the tea. So I took some Benadryl. I picked the kids up. My husband came home from work and I said, I think I need to go to the emergency room. We went to the local place, a storefront ER.
Uh-huh.
And so I got there and the doctor said, oh, yes, this is an allergic reaction. He gave me adrenaline and some other things and said, oh, you'll be fine, because now the hives were growing all over me. So
Yeah.
right across the street was the dance school where I was, and I had a practice for my tap dance recital. I thought I'd
Mm-hmm.
go over there since I was feeling better. And so I went there, but I sat on a chair during the whole practice. But I thought it just would be helpful to see it. As soon as I
Mm-hmm.
stood up, I collapsed on the floor, on the dance floor, and
Wow.
I went into anaphylactic shock right there.
My
And
goodness.
and so I felt very sick. I just started to vomit and I just collapsed. And I had a near-death experience, and that changed everything for me and belief in myself because I
Yes.
saw myself in this white light just like floating. It was just so beautiful and comfortable. And I thought to myself, oh, I could do this all the time.
Right? Yeah.
And then there were these 2 angels there, and they were telling me, "You see that door over there? You could go through that, and you could do like this all the time, you know?" And I'm saying, "Wait a minute," to myself, I said, "I have things to do. I have
I'm
my
not done
business.
yet.
I have my children." Right?
Yeah.
So then I started to see my children's faces one by one, the youngest first. "Mommy, mommy, you have to come back," and then each child. Then I got to my husband. My husband was hysterical. He said, "You have to come back. I don't know what to do with these
Do with these
kids."
kids.
Right?
Of course.
So
Yeah.
so that's when my dance teacher revived me. And I
Mm,
woke up with these little girls in ballerina outfits, tutus, looking down at me. And I knew then that my return was right for my family and for the work that I had to do, working with
mm-hmm.
children, teens, and young adults. And so,
Wow.
so that was a great learning experience for me, really scary. I was in the hospital for 4 days after that,
Wow.
getting drugs and prednisone, and it took me months and months and months to heal from that. But I did heal from it, and I did go to my dance recital 6 weeks later. I
Wow. Do you
dragged
see?
myself there. Yes,
Wow. It's
and
one
then
thing. Yeah.
I used my techniques to help me through. I had chronic, and at the end of it, I got myself to apply to Columbia University, and I got in and I went to school. That's what I did with the chronic
You
fatigue
got
and
to.
made it into something special.
Yes, that's what I call authentic mastery when your message is proven in your own life. It's one thing to teach resilience, but it's another thing to truly live it, Dr. Christine, and you're an example of that. And that is powerful, powerful takeaways. Listen, we cannot teach you enough of what Dr. Christine has done in her work and what she's doing. You can definitely grab a copy of her book. Dr. Christine, can you tell us what is your favorite way for us to connect with you?
Yes, well, by the way, you can purchase my book on Amazon or wherever books are sold, and it comes in print, ebook, and also audiobook.
Audiobook.
And
Yep.
yes, audiobook. And also you can contact me at through my websites, drchristinesilverstein.com. That's my book website. And also my clinical website is called idealperformance.net. I have a YouTube channel called The Young Navigator, and there are lots of stories on there about healing, Operation Heal, and other stories, winning ways for teens. And you can view those. And you can also call me. I have an office called the Summit Center for Ideal Performance. It's in Oakland, New Jersey, but I do work online as well. And my number is 201-739-4690. Or you can also access me through my websites. So I'd
Absolutely.
be happy to answer anybody's questions, or, it's just that they want to talk to me about a certain issue they have. And by the way, these techniques are fun. The teenagers who
Yes.
learn them, they love them. They said, why didn't anybody tell me about this before? Right? So you can have a good time with it, knowing what to do and helping yourself.
Yes, and I will definitely be seeing what new things I can learn from you. Dr. Christine, it's just been, thank you so much for your insightful and inspiring conversation. You're not only helping people and young people and their parents navigate adversity, you're giving all of us a blueprint for resilience. Now, disruptors, to connect with Dr. Christine, wherever you're listening and watching this episode, in the description, we have all her information here. Visit her website at drchristinesilverstein.com, or you can go to her business website, idealperformance.net. Grab a copy of her book. It is very practical, and you can implement a lot of the techniques, and you'll learn more about how they've changed lives and minds around the world. Her award-winning book, Wrestling Through Adversity, is available on Amazon and other retailers. If you're not a reader, you have no excuse, because she's already prepared the book in audio form. I will be doing the audio as well. Then remember, when
Audio's
life,
great. That's a
yes,
great,
it is.
it's great stories. And I love the way it was done by an actress. So do it.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you can, and you don't have to have it holding while you're on the treadmill, while you're taking a walk,
Hmm.
or you're just
Hmm.
traveling on the bus. You can absolutely be listening to the book. That's one of the ways I get to read at least 2 to 3 books per month through audiobook. And then some of them I have the book, the hard copy or the e-copy. And when I'm, laying around in bed or resting, I can actually grab the book itself and I'm listening to the audio. I'm pretty interesting a reader, but that's how I keep growing, and it helps me glow. So this book is definitely, I'm excited. I did not realize it had an audio format, so I'm definitely going to grab that this weekend. Yes.
That's great. Yes, I appreciate
Yes.
that very much, and for your invitation to speak with you today.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to see how much more we can learn from you. The steppers, remember, when life wrestles you down, mindful toughness is how you get back up. I'm Dr. Alisa with Dr. Christine Silverstein saying, keep mastering your mindset, think, speak, do, become, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a great one. Bye-bye.